right, good morning and welcome to the special city council meeting of May 19th, 2022. I am calling the meeting to order remotely. I apologize ahead of time for my scheduling conflict, which has me out of town. But fortunately, with us becoming more accustomed to using modern systems and technology, I'm able to join my colleagues virtually. I'll be conducting the meeting, hopefully with the assistance of the Mayor Pro Tem this morning. This is a special budget study session. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Brotman.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
And Mayor Kasakian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the Thursday, May 19th, 2022 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on May 16th, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Great. Mr. Galanian?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor Kasakian, members of City Council. Thank you for participating in the fifth budget study session and probably the last one for this year. And before we delve into the presentations, I'd like to follow up on a question that you, Mr. Mayor, asked at the last budget study session regarding the critical negotiation team and SWAT and our police department and its related cost. With that, I'm going to invite Chief Povolitis to, as a follow-up response to your question.
Good morning, Mayor Kasakian, members of council, Carl Povolitis, police chief. This is to follow up on the questions of what we spend on a SWAT team. So just by way of background, we are a tier 1 SWAT team, which is the highest tier that you can have, but we are not a full-time SWAT team. We have approximately 28 people assigned to our SWAT team, and when we look at a SWAT team, it also includes a crisis negotiation team. That's an essential part of dealing with high-risk issues. And we have approximately 14 people. So what you see here on the slide is the actual amount that we spend on the SWAT team over time. It is a 3-year average. It will approximate what we spend. Because it is an ancillary duty, these people are distributed throughout our organization and do other things full-time. We provide the training, and then when we need them, we will pull them together for a major emergency. But one of the advantages that we have is because they're distributed out the organization, their expertise is also distributed throughout the organization. So where something, if we have a high-risk situation that would not qualify for an actual SWAT call-out, we have SWAT operators who are out there who can then provide guidance and assist with tactics and help us bring those higher-risk situations to a successful and hopefully peaceful resolution through those tactics. Same thing with the crisis negotiation team. Again, they are distributed throughout the organization. So when we have situations involving people who may be suicidal or people that we need to negotiate with to get out, where we might not be doing a full activation of a team, we have those people available to assist, and so it's not unusual for them. So when we're talking about mental health related issues, these folks have some of that extra training. The CNT team regularly works the suicide prevention hotline in order to maintain those skills. So what we spend a year on our crisis negotiation team is roughly $106,000. Our SWAT team costs us about $325,000. Training and equipment averages out about $57,000, so we're spending about $489,000. So for a basis of comparison, if we were assigned this out as a full-time team, which we don't have, but if we were assigned it out as a full-time team, that cost would be about $5.8 million. So we get the capabilities of a full-time SWAT team with the ability to respond to any emergency within the city for about 10% of that cost.
Excuse.
Go ahead.
Mr. Agajanian.
Yeah, no, please.
This SWAT members then, they are part of the organization. It's not that they're separated and they're going through training every day. They come in and go. So they're regular police officers, but with the special training. Is that?
That's correct. They are within our organization. So we have patrol officers who are members of the SWAT team. We have detectives that are members of the SWAT team. They are throughout the organization. So they train 2 days a month for the specialized skills. The rest of the time they are investigating cases, they are answering calls for service, they are doing the multitude of things that our organization does. So they are not assigned full-time. It is an ancillary duty. You're correct.
Thank you.
Chief,
I have two questions. Number one, to what extent are the SWAT officers trained in de-escalation of incidents?
Mayor Kasakian, members of council, Councilmember Najarian, that is actually a critical component. It said the idea of SWAT is to have the specialized skills for hostage rescue, but as it's told you, having the crisis negotiating team, that is actually part of having a SWAT team. It's an essential part of it because a lot of the tactics that we're doing is trying to de-escalate it and bring it to a peaceful conclusion. And knock on wood, that's where we've ended up with the operations that we've had. We've been able to bring them to the high-risk situations to a peaceful conclusion.
And is there one overriding goal in a SWAT call-out? Is it apprehension? Is it protection of the public? Is it neutralizing a threat? Is there, or is it different for each scenario?
It's a combination of those. It is obviously always protection of the public. It is trying to bring it to a peaceful resolution, but it is also the protection of life. And realize that when a SWAT team is called out, it is an extremely high-risk situation. This could be somebody who may have barricaded themselves, and that will have a set of priorities of making sure we protect the public and trying to bring it to a peaceful resolution. If it's a hostage-type situation, it is going to be the protection of the hostage's life and trying to bring it to a peaceful resolution at the same time.
Last comment. In years past, council has been invited to the range to observe some of the tactics on the SWAT, that the SWAT officers use. Maybe it'd be a good time to look at our schedules and see if we can do that in the future.
Always willing to do that. I think it's important for you all to see how those tactics work and how that team works. I think the response that we've had from past things is people are very impressed with the tactics and the professionalism. And as I said, when I look at this, this is worth the investment that we make because of the services and the capabilities it provides to our city when we need it. It is, how I would put this, it is low frequency, high risk, where we spend a lot of time training, but as I said, it is worth the investment.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think
Do any
that's-
of my other colleagues have questions?
No.
If not, I have a few questions. So I have no doubt that our SWAT team is trained professionally, and I have no doubt that you have faith in the essential aspect of this operation. But my question is regarding the figure, the monetary figure that's up on the slide, is that $325,348 what accounts for the cost of the officers to train? Is that the hourly rate that we pay our officers translated to the amount of time spent in training?
That's actually our overtime costs that we end up spending on the training. The other costs are absorbed within our normal budget.
So in other words, so when they're training, part of that is for overtime costs. Can you explain how that is implemented or why it's considered an overtime cost?
So some of it is overtime depending on the schedule the officer works because the officers are dispersed throughout the organization. As said, some work patrol, some work detectives. If they are on duty, then the training is conducted on duty and just absorbed within our budget. If they are not on duty, then the training is conducted on overtime, and we pay the overtime for that.
Okay. Do we know of the overall hours that are spent? What percentage of those that are being trained? If we have, I think it was 28 people on our SWAT team. What percentage of those end up using overtime for the trainings?
I would estimate probably about half, maybe a little bit less for the overtime. And then, of course, those numbers also include the operational costs when we conduct actual SWAT operations.
When you say it's actual SWAT operation, what exactly is an actual SWAT operation?
So if we actually have a call out, any overtime associated with the call out would be accounted for that. Or if we are serving a high risk warrant where we're using a SWAT team, that funding is also in that number.
So agencies that don't have these SWAT teams, how do they serve high-risk warrants?
They either choose not to use a SWAT team, or you end up counting on mutual aid. So you end up either using mutual aid or contracting with somebody else to do it.
Okay, would those other contracting with somebody else would be who?
Primarily, if it's mutual aid, we would either depend primarily on LA County or LAPD.
And they have full-time SWAT units?
Yes, they actually have full-time. They have officers assigned full-time to SWAT teams.
who do nothing but SWAT, correct?
That's correct.
Is
Mr.
it
Mayor,
possible for us to do critical negotiations training without having a SWAT team?
You can always do that, but the two really need to be married together. And we found that for us to be very effective because both of those components work together. Oftentimes when we're doing crisis negotiations, we're dealing with a high-risk situation. And so you need both the tactical and technical skills along with the crisis negotiation skills.
It is possible for, I mean, it is not two parts of an operation that need to be married together. You can have all our officers trained in critical negotiation training if we needed it.
I'm not sure I understood the question, but if I think I have it, is like we do use crisis negotiators on some instances where we do not have a SWAT call out. But if we have a SWAT call out, we always send crisis negotiators with it. That is an important part of a SWAT team. It is part of being a Tier 1 SWAT team. You have to have both married together.
Okay, but you can have a SWAT team without a critical negotiation team. You're saying you cannot have that, correct?
No, if you have a SWAT team, you need the CNT component of the SWAT team. Part of being able to de-escalate and bring things down is being able to have those negotiators in place.
And I apologize if these questions seem ignorant. To paraphrase Phil Hartman, I'm just a simple caveman. I don't understand how the SWAT team and the CNT operates. I'm assuming that all of our police are being trained in de-escalation tactics. That's been my understanding. The CNT is for those critical situations where there's an actual negotiator that is needed. That's
correct. All of our officers get training in de-escalation. They get training in mental health. We have some officers who have a deeper level of training and a deeper level of expertise. Those are the people who are assigned to our crisis negotiation team. And just to be clear, in order to be a Tier 1 SWAT team, CNT is an absolute essential component. We have to have both of the components, both the tactical and the negotiations.
But we can still have CNT separate from a SWAT team. We can have those individuals trained at that deeper, higher level.
You can have crisis negotiators, but if you have that tactical incident, for example, if we were to rely on somebody else for this, then we would end up turning over everything to them because it's going to function as a team. Okay. What percentage of cities in Los Angeles County that have their own police agencies that are perhaps not contract cities have a SWAT team? Do we know? I don't know off the top of my head. There are a combination of ways that cities do that because most cities find that valuable. So some cities have their own. If you're a large or medium-sized agency, you usually have your own. So both Pasadena and Burbank have their own SWAT teams as ancillary duties. Some of the smaller cities will actually combine into a regional SWAT team. Okay. So I'll wrap up my line of questioning because I don't want to take up the whole conversation with this. But the reason I raise this issue is not because I don't believe that we need to have a effective and top-tier police department that serves our community, but it's about where we allocate our resources. I can tell you that, I know that agencies such as Burbank, Pasadena may have SWATs as well. I don't know if it's possible, but for us to combine, if we've had the SWAT team, and I don't know, I'd like to know how often we've actually activated the SWAT team in the last 10 years, what the average is. Does that really make sense for the amount of money that it's costing annually to have it and to maintain it for the upkeep of equipment? But if there's a way to have combined resources, if we don't use it nearly enough between the three cities for each of us to have individually our own, doesn't make more sense to have the three agencies cooperate to have a joint SWAT, mutual aid, whatever model that would lessen the financial burden on the individual cities. It's something that I'd like to see how we could explore doing that, including seeing if there's if it makes financial sense for us to possibly outsource some of the SWAT operation requirements. If it's something that's going to save the city money as we come down to the next 2 years, as we'll see, as I'm sure we do the wrap up of the budget, it is something that I would like us to at least have some information on. That doesn't necessarily mean that we do away with the model of how we're operating now,
But I think these are things, when we look at where we're at this point, reaching between the cushions to see where we can find nickels, pennies, and dimes to figure out what services. I know that some of my colleagues have said, I've heard, I think, on various candidate forums or whatever else, that we're not going to cut from public safety, but we're going to cut from libraries and we're going to cut from parks because those are services that perhaps are seen as less essential. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think everyone has to pull their part, pull their weight and do their part. Every department, and if there's ways that we can work smarter versus harder, then we have to. So I would like to see how often we've initiated or activated SWAT in the last 10 years and the types of operations that it was initiated for. It could be presented to me in a memo format. I don't need to have it come back to council publicly, but if it does, that's fine as well.
I don't have 10 years at my fingertips, but in the last 3 to 5, we activate an average of 4 to 6 times per year, sometimes here, sometimes serving warrants out of town, sometimes assisting other agencies. Always happy to look at the possibility of combining. We have done that analysis in the past, and up to this point, it has made more sense for us to remain independent, but always happy to take another look at that.
Excuse me. Do you know if, let's say this year, how many times SWAT team has been called for?
Last year, I don't think we've had a call out yet this year, but for 2021, we were called out 6 times.
Thank you.
I mean, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your comments, and I'm just not comfortable looking further down the line, although what you're asking for isn't down the line, it's an incremental step, but I'm not comfortable having officers from Pasadena Police or Burbank Police coming into our city to handle an issue. I don't think Pasadena Police or Burbank Police have the same level of training, commitment, knowledge of the community that our officers do. And that goes the same for the Sheriff's Department as well. So it's something that may not on its surface be used as often as the funds would justify, but when you do need it, it's a critical situation with lives, sometimes multiple lives at stake. And I wouldn't want to police, Pasadena has their problems. Burbank Police have their problems. We seem to have a pretty good handle on our training, and I wouldn't be looking to outsource or to combine with Pasadena or Burbank, but that's not what you're requesting. You're requesting an incremental step. I don't have an objection to that, but generally that's where my thoughts are.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, since I don't see any other questions, we'll start this morning's presentation that will cover 7 support services departments. Although smaller in size, these departments are a significant and integral part of the organization and really the backbone of the city's operational departments. These departments' functions and highlighted projects and programs that I will go through may not be clearly obvious to be associated with Council's established priority areas. However, they all play an important role in some shape or form to accomplish your goals and priorities. The presentations of these departments' budgets will be shorter than the previous ones, so I will pause at the end of each department's presentations to provide an opportunity for you to ask questions or make comments. Also, at the end of the departmental budget presentations, we have put together a summary of the budgets that you will have seen thus far in 5 budget study sessions. So with that, we'll start with the Finance Department. The Finance Department is comprised of 7 distinct divisions. Accounting, which is responsible for the development, implementation, and maintenance of financial accounting systems and controls, the preparation of city's financial statements in accordance with the generally acceptable accounting principles, or GAAP, and maintaining the city's fixed asset, managing the city's debt and coordinating all financial audits. Accounts payables, responsible for processing the city's accounts payable and issuing checks to vendors, internal controls and established payable procedures, and administering city's unclaimed check procedures. Billings and collections, responsible for city's billed receivables, project billing for public works and GWP, and collection of city's delinquent accounts. Budget obviously plays a major part in preparing the annual budget, as they have done this year, forecasting and monitoring the city's revenue resources, such as property taxes, sales taxes, and utility user taxes, establishing and maintaining the citywide fee schedule. Financial applications, responsible for providing support of the city's munis or enterprise resource planning system and all financial modules. Payroll, responsible for processing employee payroll, filing reports with taxing authorities and regulatory agencies, coordinating employee benefit coverage, and reporting with the HR department. And finally, purchasing, responsible for procurement of goods, materials, supplies, equipment, and services for all city departments at the lowest possible cost. As for personnel count, you'll notice a reduction of 4.5 FTEs. This is primarily due to restructuring of the ISD and finance departments, if you recall last year, that resulted in the elimination of the previous finance director position and shifting of half of Mr. Bradford's position to finance. That plus the internal audit section that was part of finance department has now been shifted, moved to management services. That includes 4 full-time equivalent employees. That's 1 internal audit manager, 2 senior internal auditors, and 1 internal auditor. An overview of that department's budget only has 1 fund. You see a decrease of 5%. That's mainly due to the shift of the, as I mentioned, internal audit section to management services and the elimination of the finance director position. A couple of departments highlights. Implementing new governmental accounting standards. The finance department will be implementing GASB, which stands for Government Accounting Standards Board 87, 94, and 96, to ensure the timely completion of the financial statement audit, provide useful information to readers of the financial statements, and maintain Glendale's credit rating. Next one is a paperless invoice and payment processing initiative. The city has done quite a bit already to move away from paper processing of many functions, example, time cards, requests for checks, contracts, etc. And we intend to fully transition into paperless invoice processing by strongly encouraging vendors to upload invoices electronically as opposed to mailing them in, and set up electronic fund transfer as the default form of payment, so no physical checks is cut or mailed. The benefits include more secure form of payment, reducing paper use and waste, and cost of purchasing demands or checks, and expedited form of payment. That covers the finance department. As I mentioned, I'll take a pause here for any questions or comments that you may have.
I guess
Questions?
just one question. So this decrease that we're seeing of $367,000, that is then going to be reflected. How much of that is appearing in management services, and how much is a net reduction because of these changes we've made?
Sorry, I'm looking for management services budget.
Because I see management services is up 822,000, but I don't know what, what the
Mr.
breakdown
Bradford,
is.
do you know what the change is going?
Councilmember Rodman, members of the council, do believe the shift from finance to management services for those positions was $923,000.
From management.
That would include all the associated benefits for those positions.
Wait, the decrease is 367.
Correct. So there'd be some netting going on, so that is a decrease, and then there'd be other cost increases in the finance budget, and we know.
Members of the council, I don't have the exact breakdown, but if you give us a few minutes, we can provide that for you. What happens is there's increases in salaries and benefits and such in the finance department, and it nets out with the decreases, so that's where the net decrease is 367,000.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking for what, if you, because there's this cost shift. So if you were to take out the cost shift, what are we really seeing in the underlying budget? Okay.
So my notes shows, like Mr. Bradford mentioned, 923,000 is the true cost of salaries and benefits for the internal audit section.
So that's what's been shifted.
Right.
So had that not been shifted, you would have seen a $600,000
Exactly.
in the finance department budget.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that would be around a 10%.
Approximately, yes.
Approximately.
On average, we see somewhere between 6 to 9%, upwards of 10%.
Okay. And what's the basis of that? That's a fairly big increase. on a
Salaries
percentage.
and benefits primarily.
So it'd be a combination of the MOU negotiated cost increases. There's a little bit of the PERS increases that we discussed, and then there'd be some possibly M&O increases. We'll look up the specific details and provide that information in just a minute.
Yeah, that'd be helpful to just kind of see the next layer down here. Okay.
When we come back to the management services budget, we'll provide you that
Okay.
information.
Excuse me. Basically, on page 5, when you say full-time employee from 41 to 36, so there is no reduction, actually. They have moved from one department to another department.
That is correct. It is reflected as a reduction in the finance headcount and finance budget, and there'll be a corresponding increase in the management services budget in not only personnel count, but salary and benefits.
All right.
There are no other questions. We'll move to the next department, which is Human Resources. Human Resources comprised of 4 divisions. Human Resources Administration, which is responsible for recruitment, selection, placement, and classification of employees, new hires, promotional hires, and employee-related transactions, citywide training and development, developing, enforcing, and ensuring compliance with personnel policies and procedures based on federal, state, and local legislation, managing the city's employee relations program, including negotiation and administration of labor contracts and resolution of employment issues. Benefits Administration, responsible for employee benefits, including medical, dental, vision, long-term disability, and life insurance programs, working with city's insurance broker and employee associations to offer quality benefits at a reasonable cost to employees, and assisting employees and retirees on matters relating to health benefits. Employee Health Services coordinates regulatory compliance examinations and physicals to ensure that employees are safe, healthy, and fit to perform the essential functions of the job, ensures compliance with federal and state law, including FMLA, Family and Medical Leave Act, as well as ADA interactive process, coordinates the Employee Assistance Program, and this past year, provided return to work guidance for pandemic-related matters, and they still are in the process of monitoring, tracking, documenting the various COVID-related leaves. Finally, workers' compensation provides professional and timely claim service to injured employees and to reduce the number of workdays lost due to injuries, and ensures injured employees receive proper medical care. As for the personnel count, there's little change. Currently, they operate with 23 FTEs. The budget overview, human resources budget comprised of 9 funds. I'll go through the majority of them. General fund, there's an increase of $228,000 due to salaries and benefits, which includes PERS, vacation, comp time, medical insurance, ISD service charge, and liability insurance. Unemployment fund, decrease in unemployment claims of $210,000 due to COVID-19 unemployment benefits ending and businesses reopening and rehiring. Compensation insurance fund, is a proposed increase of $250,000 in claim payments to account for potential increases in number of claims due to work-related injuries, but primarily rising medical costs. This is offset by a decrease of $519,000 in cost allocation and ISD charge. Dental insurance fund, $100,000 increase in PPO claims.
Mr. Gula, City Manager, we're having some technical issues. The PowerPoint actually just vanished, so we're going to look into it right now. We are back live.
So as I was mentioning, dental insurance fund, there's an increase in PPO claims of $100,000 forecasted. Medical insurance fund, there's increase in Anthem PPO claims of $3.6 million. However, that's due to an overall rate increase of 31%, mostly based on the expected claims that Anthem is forecasting. This is partially offset by a 5% decrease in Kaiser premiums of $532,000. Yeah.
That's unusual.
Yeah. Vision insurance fund, it's a small decrease. Employee benefits fund, a $298,000 increase. This is based on actuals. We anticipate increases in separation and vacation payouts and a decrease in comp time payout, which nets out to be $377,000. RHSP, retirement health plan, savings plan, that's the benefit fund is the name of it. Although we see a big percentage increase, it's due to a transfer of $3 million to liability insurance fund. Since RHSP fund has a healthy fund balance of $4.3 million, this transfer is recommended because the self-insured retention is increasing to $5 million on the excess liability, and our broker hasn't been able to find coverage with a $2 million self-insured retention that we previously had, and this additional $3 million will help the liability fund just in case of a large settlement. Post-employment benefit funds, which is again based on actuals, is a decrease in PERS replacement benefit. Departmental highlights include completing labor negotiations with GPOA, GMA Fire, and GMA Police for MOUs that go into effect next fiscal year. which will in turn provide predictability of salary and benefit costs and outlines terms and conditions of employment. As for recruitments, HR department will recruit the fire chief and CDD director position, amongst many others, work with departments to attract diverse and talented applicants, and digitize recruitment documents, which will meet the hiring needs of the organization and streamline a process for raters while reducing costs. Another planned initiative is the digitization of all employee personnel files through a third-party software, which will reduce printing, filing, copying, and ordering costs, and allow electronic accessibility to employees and supervisors. We are requesting a $30,000 appropriation that will come out of the ITD applications fund that we'll cover later on. Next is an improved employee training program that will include transition from in-person to online, as well as on-demand training, and continuing implicit bias training to address diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. And this will develop our employees' leadership skills, help reduce the likelihood of bias, break stereotypes, and create empathy. And this will come out of the Human Resources General Fund budget. I have mentioned previously workforce demographics report that will be completed next summer. This will depict the diversity of the organization, identify workforce trends throughout the years, and an effort to attract and welcome a diversity of our employee pool over time. This will also be covered by the Human Resources General Fund. That covers the Human Resources Department. I'll pause here for questions and comments.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Is he on?
Go ahead.
This workforce demographics report, now we have a report. How often do we do this?
Mayor Kasankian, Member City Council, Councilman Brotman, every 2 years.
So what we're doing is just an update of
That is
the
correct.
same thing that we did 2 years ago.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, one other. On the CDD director, where do we stand on getting that position, I guess, identified? I know we have to do something, or maybe we did through Civil Service Commission. Can you tell us where we are and what's the recruitment timeline?
Right. Mayor Kasakian, Member City Council, Councilman Brotman, we took the updated job spec and bulletin to Civil Service Commission last Wednesday. And I'll invite Amy Martin, our interim director of the HR, to provide you a timeline.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Brotman, as Mr. Golanian mentioned, Civil Service Commission approved the job bulletin and class specification for the Director of Community Development. That position was posted this week. We are placing advertisement in a variety of sources, and the recruitment will close on June 10th.
Do we have an outside recruiter for that?
No, Mr. Brotman. Councilmember Brotman, we don't.
So how are we doing our recruitment?
Go ahead.
Councilmember Brotman, our office is handling the recruitment. We're working with a variety of, we're placing advertisements in a variety of sources, both in specialty publications as well as diverse publications, and including LinkedIn. We're doing in-mail messaging and reaching out to a number of candidates who hopefully will apply for the position, and our office is conducting that executive recruitment process.
And Councilman Brotman, we are working through our network of folks that we know in the industry and in various departments and the private sector directly to put the word out.
Okay. I mean, I guess I have some concern because this is probably one of the most important positions that we are going to be filling. I want to make sure we get the best possible talent pool. And so, I know, using an outside recruiter costs money. But if it gets us a better talent pool, it may be worth it. I mean, this is really a critical position. And we know that there's been a lot of frustration about certain parts of this department, and we really need, the best possible person to resolve some of those issues.
Councilman Brotman, I certainly agree with that sentiment, and that is my goal. I will not recommend any appointment which has less qualification at the top that the city is accustomed to and deserves, and the community deserves. And this is an attempt to save $35,000. And quite frankly, the last couple of recruitments that we have used, executive recruiters have not impressed me with the list that they have brought forward for a variety of reasons. But we will take a look, and if the pool is not up to our expectations, we can always pivot and see if we can hire an outside consultant, a firm, to help us with further outreach.
Okay, well, please keep us updated on that. And if we are going to make that decision, let us know.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may? On the workforce demographics report, I just want to mention that the Commission on the Status of Women is also doing a status report, and that always includes the city staff. So I know we'll get some good information, additional information from that report, not only city staff, but also the entire city. I think that's a positive for women and our workforce demographics. So thanks to them.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to...
Before we move on to city clerk, I don't know. I don't believe we currently provide paid parental leave to employees. I would like to know what the financial impact of that would be on the department and on the city if we were to provide paid parental leave to our employees.
Oh, parental leave. We can, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly look into that. It may not be readily available. We'll definitely put some numbers together.
Thank you.
That would be a meet and confer item,
Yes, it will be meet and confer.
negotiate with.
Yes. May I move on, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please go on.
Next up is City Clerk's office, which is comprised of 3 sections: council, board, and commission support that records the actions and proceedings of City Council and Housing Authority meetings, provides support to boards and commissions, administers regulations relating to the Fair Political Practice Commission, election services team that assists candidates with filing of election documents and coordination with LA County on elections, records management, that is the custodian of records, administers the city's records management policy and program, and maintains and updates the city's municipal code. As far as personnel is concerned, there's actually a decrease of 1 full-time employee. This is due to a vacant office specialist position, which was a result of transferring one of our staff members from the city manager's office to the city clerk's office. Hence, this vacant position has become available to be directed to another department. A budget overview. This department also only has one fund. There's a modest increase of 2.9% due to salaries and benefits, an amount of 18,000, and ISD service charges of 11,000. Couple of departmental highlights. Implementing records management policies and procedures for all departments to free up storage space, to comply with state and federal records keeping guidelines, and reduce paper use. Digital application for candidates. This is to make it more efficient for candidates filling out city's portion of candidates packet. This will obviously reduce paper waste. And both these initiatives will come out of the City Clerk General Fund. And that covers the City Clerk's office. Are there any questions?
Questions?
You can't see.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. On page 22, it says full-time 7, now proposed 6. So we know there is election going on, and city clerk, there are 2 candidates, one gentleman and one lady. So how that will impact? A person will be elected. How will impact this chart, personnel chart?
What do you mean?
One person will be added to that department. Then how will impact on this numbers?
I understand. Mayor Kasakian, Member City Council, Councilmember Agajanian, there is a vacant position. There will be a vacant position of city clerk that the successful candidate fill.
Okay, but on this chart that you have,
That will not
Does it-
increase the count.
so it will not be part of this chart then?
No,
The
it's-
per-
The full-time, 6 positions, there are 6 positions, not necessarily 6 people. So there's a vacant position,
All right,
right? So that position will be filled by the successful candidate. So when we show full-time, these are positions. They're not necessarily filled positions. Vacant positions are also included in this count. Mr. Mayor, I don't see any hands raised. I'm not sure if you have any questions.
So one of the questions I have is that we know that there is some issues in terms of continuity of, it was alluded to by Councilmember Abajanian that there's an election, there'll be a new individual coming in. How do we ensure that the staff in the city clerk's office has the resources they need to be able to provide the services to the public? Does this budget reflect any, the type of, I believe I had raised the issue of certificate pay for individuals that do receive the certification of being a certified municipal clerk, the additional pay that I believe they deserve for going above what is the minimum requirement by the city to become certified?
Mr. Mayor, this proposed budget does not include certificate pay. However, we can always make an adjustment in the first quarter or mid-year budget review when it comes up.
I think in the effort to let the public know and for all of us to prepare ourselves for what we are envisioning in this department, we should hook into it or at least start considering that this department's budget will be adjusted, right? And in the event that we have some of these items that we bring to you on various departments where we say, well, what about this? How do we do that? If that's going to have a potential impact, we should earmark or we should flag that now so we know which of the department's budgets we're going to have to revisit in a month or 2 months, because there is going to be significant changes in this department. When you talk about 6 employees, right, and you have 1 new employee coming in, that's a significant change in the workforce of that division. And of course, how we ensure the continuity of it by creating the assistant or chief assistant city clerk positions for individuals who can continue to do the work that is needed to make sure that the city is running smoothly.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can definitely adjust the proposed budget. It's, for example, for the certificate pay, I don't see it to be a significant amount. So when we bring the budget for your adoption, we can definitely adjust it up to include that pay. Okay. And if there are any other adjustments that we need to make per your direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Next up is the Office of the City Attorney, which is comprised of two main divisions, Departmental Services, that provide day-to-day advice and transactional assistance to City Council, Executive Team, and City Departments, all in an effort to reduce risk, and prosecuting violations of the Glendale Municipal Code. Liability and risk management, defend litigation filed against the city and its officers and employees, investigate and review claims for damages and bring same to disposition, manage city's insurance program, including procurement, renewals, and approvals, as well as manage city's safety program. As for personnel, this department has also seen a reduction of 1 FTE, which was a vacant insurance services technician position, and the total stands at 19 FTEs currently.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Of the 19 positions, how many are actual attorneys?
Councilmember Devine, we have 12 attorneys in the office.
Okay, thank you.
12 attorney positions.
Yeah. As for the budget, City Attorney's Office contains two funds, general fund, and you see an increase of 9.3%. Again, an increase in salaries and benefits, which includes vacation and comp time, PERS, medical insurance, etc. That's $372,000. ISD service charge and liability insurance. In the liability insurance fund, there's an increase in excess insurance premium of about $1.2 million based on brokers' expected renewal cost. The overall insurance market, as you know, has continued to harden, particularly for property and liability lines of coverage. These are, however, offset by a decrease in salaries and benefits due to redirection or elimination of that one vacant position in the city attorney's office. Departmental highlights. Based on the city council's established priorities, the goal is to assist departments with work plan, projects, and programs. And some examples include clean and renewable energy development, investment, and purchase agreements, REACH codes, objective design standards, South Glendale Community Plan, numerous public works and community service and parks infrastructure projects, as well as Grayson Energy Center and Shoal Canyon Biogas Project. These services will help the city achieve City Council's goals and compliance with the law. Another goal for the next year is to explore joining insurance risk pool for an appropriate and affordable insurance coverage to ensure against all risks. Lastly, to defend the city in CEQA litigations, the city will this is related to the citywide pedestrian plan, South Glendale Community Plan, which is an appeal, Shoal Biogas Project, and the Grayson Energy Center EIR approval. This will allow the implementation of plans for improved mobility, increased pedestrian safety, housing, urban design, clean energy, and electric reliability. And that covers the city attorney's office.
Question,
Any
Mayor?
questions?
Yes, I
please.
have. Can you explain the joint risk insurance pool?
Sure. Madam, I'm sorry, Councilmember Devine is still doing it. So after we had a couple of years of increasing premiums year over year, and we hired a new insurance broker, and one of the options available to cities is what was called a joint insurance pool. It's pooling with other entities of similar nature to the city of Glendale, other cities, to obtain insurance. So we have reached out to one of those pools to provide us information about what it would cost to join, whether we could join. And what that does is spreads that risk that we have to all the other agencies. The obvious benefit of it, that would be one obvious benefit of it. The downside, obviously, is if the other agencies have a big hit year over year, then our premiums could go up. So that's an assessment we're going to do once we get the information from the pool that we ask for information from, and then we would bring that to you for consideration.
Are you able to let us know, disclose the other city that you contacted?
Well, it's not. It's a pool that has other cities in it already. I don't have it in front of me, but I could. When we bring that to you, we would definitely disclose to you what cities make up that pool.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me, should it be same size cities, or you can join, let's say, to LA?
It's the one we're looking at is similar cities to Glendale, some smaller, obviously, some bigger. I'm not sure if my staff knows the cities that are part of that particular pool, but it's basically based on the type of risk, the type of liabilities that they have, their general funds, those sorts of things.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple of questions. So right now we're dealing with issues of not being able to prosecute or have certain arrests that we make being prosecuted by the DA. And I had asked that if we could look into that being done by the city. Have you looked into that? What is the cost impact of that? Can you please explain?
Mr. Mayor, we have reviewed that. We provided a memorandum to the council. As noted, we would first, in order to take over the prosecution of state misdemeanors, we would either need to amend our charter or ask for the district attorney's consent. The district attorney has already rejected another city that requested to take over their own misdemeanors, the city of Manhattan Beach. So I doubt that they would be amenable to allowing a city to take over the state misdemeanors based on their policy and philosophical issues. And so that would be something, obviously, the charter. With respect to the cost of providing that service, if we took that service in-house, looking at our neighbors, Pasadena and Burbank, and the cost that it costs them based on their population, based on the number of case filings that are submitted to their office for prosecution by their police departments. I don't have the number in front of me, but I believe it would cost in excess of $4 million. So again, we're happy to redistribute that memo and make it available to you for further direction from the council.
And in terms of having it done through charter, what can you please specify what that would require?
Sure. So it would require the council to adopt a resolution to put it on the ballot, and then we would have to bring that to the voters at the next general election. So it would have to be 2024.
Okay. And is the city attorney's office looking into having a charter review of our charter? I know Burbank has, I believe, a standing charter review commissioner has one that meets regularly. When was the last time we had ours meet?
Mr. Mayor, the last time I believe we had a full charter review it was in 2004, which put various charter amendments on the ballot for the election of 2005. And then from that point on, we've had various amendments to the charter that have been put forward by the council, but not as part of an overall charter review effort. So if that's something the council wanted to pursue, we would need direction to start working on that and bringing it back.
I think, though, that it was brought forth by council, was it not? Not this council, but prior councils had requested it. There had been direction given.
I'm looking at the city manager and deputy city manager, and I don't recall it ever, we getting direction to bring that forward for a discussion.
Not by this council, but I remember when I think it was Mayor Sinanian who was on the council, there was a request made for that.
Mr. Mayor, not to our recollection, but we will definitely go back and research our files.
I think it was more recent, the discussion, Mr. Mayor. I think it was more recent. I mean, under the Jackie Lacey tenure, she was prosecuting, all the crimes that we thought should be prosecuted. It wasn't until a change in regime that I think these issues bubbled up to the surface and we talked about it, but I don't think there was direct. I think, as the city attorney said, I think you mentioned all these steps that we have to go through.
Talking about a general.
Yeah, not specific to just the ability to prosecute these misdemeanors. I was referring also to an overall charter review, reviewing our entire charter, updating it, updating language, getting rid of language that's obsolete. One of the things that's still in our charter, and I think was an issue, was in our charter, it still may actually indicate there were some dates regarding elections or some things related to the previous election cycle that we may need to go back and see if there's any cleanup for. Is that something, are you saying, Mr. City Attorney, that you need someone from council to say this is something we want and have it second at this moment and that it hasn't been said before? Or
That's what I think, Mr. Mayor.
And Mr. Mayor, this was, I'm pretty sure you remember, but this was one of your goals as mayor for this year, and you had noted that you'll bring it up at a council meeting and get a second so we can move forward with it.
Well, I'd like to see if any of my colleagues would like to second, and I believe that it was brought up by previous councils. I'm pretty sure of my recollection of the facts, but I'll make that suggestion and hope that one of my council colleagues would second that we start looking into a charter review committee. And we should have a one that meets at least every 5 to at most 10 years to review our charter.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. And then lastly, the question I have is, in terms of the city attorney's position, which is one of our very important positions and essentials to local governance, you answer directly to the council?
That's correct.
Okay. How is the city attorney's performance reviewed?
Mr. Mayor, the city, the council can request that the city attorney's performance be reviewed at any particular time, or it can be done annually.
And when was the last time a review was done of the city attorney in Glendale?
I believe it was 2017.
Yeah, and that's because just council hasn't requested it. I mean, we do a review of the city manager annually, do we not?
It is in the contracts of both the city manager and prior city managers and the city attorney for it to be done annually. I just believe it hasn't been requested by the council. It hasn't been requested by the city attorney, by me, or by the city manager. So we've been waiting, I guess, for the council to ask for it.
And when would council ask for that? Would it have to be done in an open session?
It could be, or it could be done, we could have a discussion and, initial discussion in closed session and see whether or not that's something council wants to do.
Well, I would hope that my colleagues would also agree that we should do a review. If we're doing a review of the city manager annually, and I believe we do one annually, we sit down, we get feedback. That should also be something that we should have been doing for the city attorney. And if not, I'd like to ask that we do it as soon as we can.
I think it's a good idea, but perhaps we should be reviewing all other executive departments. No, Mr. City
I don't know
Manager?
about all executive
Just-
departments, but
yeah.
at least the
Why?
two that
Just the
we're in
ones that
charge of
report to
hiring.
us?
If I may, yeah, it's within the purview of the council to review the city manager and the city attorney's performance.
And that's it? We have no purview to review any other department's performance? Just
In
as a
conjunction with the
routine?
city manager's performance, I believe you can look at just broad performance issues as it relates to all the departments, because they all do report to the city manager.
So how about
but-
city clerk, let's say? No offense, Aram. Do we have any discretion to review the city clerk or city treasurer, let's say, in their?
That's an interesting question. I think as it relates to, I'd have to look at that. There's an argument that you would, because even though they don't report to the council, again, because the council sets the pay for those positions and there's no other performance measure, there's no other mechanism to review the performance of those two offices. Arguably, we haven't done it historically, but it's something I can look at.
I mean, we were talking about this certificate with the city clerk and judging that should go with other departments too. I mean,
Again, something I'll look at in particular, but I would again, I would note that I think the regular performance evaluation of the city manager and city attorney hasn't occurred since 2017. And typically, it's scheduled in our agreements to occur after budget, so sometime in the fall. And so if that's something the council wants to do, I can just bring it.
You'd be bringing that to closed session?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I for one, I think that it's important that we do regular, consistent reviews of our top two executives. And I find it concerning that we haven't been doing that. And I'd like to see it something that happens regularly moving forward. It could be a meeting where everything is fine and we pat everyone on the back and then we move on. Or it's one where we have reviews of performance within the divisions and overall operations of the city. But I do think that in the spirit of running the organization as efficiently, as transparently as possible, we need to be doing this. So I would like to see and ask my colleagues, since obviously we need to make things very clear and publicly requested, that we have this happen regularly, both for the city manager and the city attorney, not just one.
May I ask a question, and I'll make a comment? How often, and this is to the city manager, how often do you evaluate the performance of your direct staff?
Good question, Councilmember Brotman. Mr. Mayor, Member of City Council, there isn't really a regular established schedule. I'd like, and I haven't had a chance to do that, I like to do it, I'd like not to wait for an annual evaluation. I like to do it in a more frequent basis throughout the year, as opposed to your traditional annual evaluation. That's something that I'm planning on doing with my direct reports.
But historically, has it been at least annual?
It's been hit and miss, Councilmember Brotman. We haven't, and my predecessors haven't necessarily done it on an annual basis.
I mean, from my experience in the corporate world, we were required to do annual performance reviews. They were in writing. There was, it was a process, and we also did kind of quarterly check-ins, which were a little bit more informal.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good practice. I'm surprised we're not doing that. So I think that would be a good practice, and I do support an annual review for our two direct reports, and I know that in our review of you, Mr. City Manager, it would incorporate, the performance of the departments, because that's part of your responsibility. So indirectly, we do that. So I'm in support of that.
And to your point, Councilmember Brotman, for every other employee in the city, that is a requirement to have annual performance evaluations processed and filed.
Okay, then we certainly should be consistent and do it for our directors as well. And other direct reports that you have. I know you have some direct reports that are not directors.
Correct. And for those direct reports, I do them on an annual basis.
And my question is about civil service. Isn't that a requirement of civil service to
No.
have a yearly evaluation?
It is, Councilmember Devine, like I mentioned, for every employee in the city. I don't believe it's a requirement for department heads or directors.
Wow. Well, I'd be in support of that, an annual
Again,
Yeah.
Council and Mayor Kasakian, I really like to change that and, like I said, do it more frequently and not wait a year.
Yeah.
So in one way or shape or form, we will get it done.
So I'm assuming that then it's clear that my request has been supported by at least 2 other council people. And I would expect us to have these regular reviews of performance moving forward and not allow it to fall through the cracks.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to management services. This department is primarily comprised of 4 sections, amongst other functions. Sustainability, which provides staff to Sustainability Commission and is responsible for city sustainability efforts, including climate action and adaptation plan. Communications and community relations includes Glendale television crew, community engagement functions, public information office, and the graphics team. Innovation and performance that oversees our Lean Six Sigma program and our performance management efforts, as well as managing the office of the city manager. Internal audit, this staffs to audit committee, is also responsible for conducting operational audits of city departments. As far as personnel count is concerned, if you recall, there's a transfer of the internal audit section from finance to management services that culminated in an increase of 4 FTEs that you see in this chart from 23 to 27. The budget for management services includes 3 funds. General fund, the main factor for the increase is due to, as I mentioned, internal audit section moving to management services, and we mentioned approximately $923,000 increase in benefits, salaries and benefits. And what? And maintenance and operations. The next is general fund, measure S, excuse me. We are not asking for any new program appropriation. Last year, we had appropriated hiring of a consultant for the climate action plan in the amount of $320,000. That's why you see a reduction. Cable access fund, it's an increase of $92,000 for various items such as monitors, desk mounts, camera and lens, video editing, workstations, etc. And the new projects being requested for GTV control room relocation for $50,000. Departmental highlights, we talked about climate action adaptation plan, or CAP. Hired a consultant to prepare the CAP so that we can quantify greenhouse gas emissions inventory, establish zero emissions target, and outline mitigation and adaptation strategies to help meet those targets. It's already a $320,000 appropriation that we are carrying over from last year. Developing REACH codes. This is, again, to hire a consultant to develop a REACH code for electrification of new buildings. This will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase energy efficiency and use of renewable energy, expand electric vehicle charging stations and infrastructure, and increase residential solar systems. There's, this is also a carryover of $50,000 from the previous year. The historic theme study, We plan to work with our consultants to provide a historical analysis of how racist practices and laws shape the city's development. And by understanding how these past practices and laws affected what Glendale looks like today, the city will be better equipped to move towards a more inclusive future. Again, as is the case here, to carry over funds of $69,000 out of general fund from last year. Continuing process improvements, our innovation office oversees the city's, like I mentioned, the Lean Six Sigma program, where staff have been trained on how to improve city processes through through a partnership with GCC's Professional Development Center. And some of the upcoming projects include review of our community engagement processes, including social media accounts and My Glendale app, and standardizing our contract templates. This is intended to reduce operational costs, improve productivity, which frees up staff resources so that they can focus on higher priority work, eliminate unnecessary steps and redundant services, which ultimately improves customer service and experience. As for performance dashboard, this is with the goal of building a customized dashboard to track high priority goals and objectives, which will in turn provide easy performance assessment at a glance to identify trends and better forecasting and improve decision making. Couple of previous dashboards that the team has already completed was the COVID dashboard that pulled data from various sources to give residents daily updates regarding positive cases and death rates, which from March 2020 to March 2021 was visited 264 times by 63,000 unique web visitors, as well as the Fire Department Area C dashboard, which allowed the 48 fire stations in the region to quickly access high-level information and allowed city leadership to easily understand trends and make decisions backed by data. For the upcoming year, as you know, City Council adopted a work plan with 4 high-level priority areas. So the team will create a dashboard, which will be an interactive and easy to review site that allows me, as your city manager, to track department's progress towards these goals at a glance and provide periodic status updates to the council. And that covers management services, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council.
So there's, Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
So one of the things we complain about as a council is not having sufficient staff, not just for scheduling, but for, assisting with constituent mail and other sort of, research and, is that, and we complain about it every year. I do, probably. Is that, we're a big city. We have an incredible amount of responsibilities if we want to be truly dedicated to our job. Some of us have more time to dedicate to that work than others. I have a daytime job. It certainly would help if I had some sort of assistance in, reading let's say the mail that comes before my desk from constituents and other agencies, responding to it, doing some research on some of the issues that council deals with. Do you want to keep us down like that?
Mr. Mayor,
I say down, what I'm saying is that unless you devote the full amount of time to really get into these issues, you're at somewhat of a disadvantage, and extra staff certainly helps in that regard. And I don't know how that would be implemented, organized, apportioned, but it's something that that I would certainly like to have assistance with in one way or another.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Councilmember Najarian, that's a very valid point, and you are correct. Council previously has raised that concern. I am planning to propose a reallocation of a position to an assistant to CM, one of whose primary responsibilities will be handling the mail, emails, phone calls that you, council members and mayor, receive from your constituents, and follow through with various departments depending on the nature of those concerns, and provide responses to you or whomever you want those responses to go to. Ideally, if money was no object, you all would have your own assistants, but there's a cost, and we keep talking about a rise in salaries and benefits. There's PERS costs that we always are cognizant of and worried about. So it's a balancing act, but I would encourage you, if you approve that reallocation, we'll try it out and see, and I'm confident it'll be a big help to me and to all of you on the council.
I mean, we're the top of the organizational chart here, and we oftentimes make policy decisions that have millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of impact. I mean, let's just talk about, and I want to get into the issue, but let's just talk about Grayson, for instance. It's a huge issue. Dan certainly has the opportunity and does a lot of the research, gets into the policy. I just don't have that much opportunity to do so. An assistant in that regard would certainly help me. So when I talk about hydrogen, I want to make sure that that's something that's reality based in foundational facts, rather than something I read on Facebook somewhere and I've taken that path to pursue it. So I think it's critical. I mean, I don't know about, this is probably the wrong place to start pinching pennies and pinching FTEs. That's what I think. I don't know. What do you think, Council? What do you guys say?
Well, I will second Councilmember Najarian's comments and say that I think that, well, I can tell you from my personal experience and observation in the city that the city manager's office is probably at its lowest staffing levels in history. And that's not to say that the existing staff isn't doing exceptional work given the resources that they have, but we're now at a place where, coming out of COVID, there being more demands on council members' times and schedules. There being a number of community organizations and events that require more and more of interaction with the city and communication. We do need to staff up. I would say that we need at least one other person assisting council members. So we need at least 2 assistants, one that could focus on the mayor and the incoming mayor, since we now have a schedule of who will that be, and one working with the rest of the council in our bullpen, or any other combination thereof. We need at least the PIO's subdivision needs help, because again, a lot of good work being done, but as we saw this last weekend, when something happens, everyone is scrambling, and we need to have everyone rowing in the same direction, and that requires many hands. And we need to do it in different languages as well, right? We need to expand and improve the way we're doing outreach, as we've seen through COVID. And, we used to have a community relations person, someone who was partially handling some of those demands, as Councilmember Najarian has stated, that we haven't had for some time. And I understand it's been in the interest of cost saving, but overall, whatever we invest here will have a return on investment, not just for the council to be able to be better engaged and informed, but for the community as well, who sometimes feels that, some council members respond to their emails and others don't. It's been overwhelming, right? And I say that as someone who's spent quite a bit of time already at City Hall. It is overwhelming, and we do need help. We are ready, as you're hearing at least one other colleague say, to invest to be able to have that help.
And Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, this is the right forum, and that's part of the goals of these budget study session. If that's your direction, fully recognizing the cost impact, you direct me to add another FTE, and we can move forward with that, and we'll adjust the budget accordingly.
I think we need to discuss it. Let's put this up for discussion. I'm not getting universal love from the entire dais, but to be fair, I mean, let's have a discussion on this, look at what the costs are, and then make that decision. This isn't a decision that anyone's directing you to do, rather to bring the subject for further discussion and policy
Right.
decision.
And if I might add, Mr. Mayor, I take the side of fiscal being fiscal conservative, that we have a lot of other issues and needs for our funding, and to allocate could be $100,000 or so to extra staff, I think is not something that I would be supporting wholeheartedly. I understand, I've often said that those that have jobs and are on council, they have to be suffering from lack of time. I know Councilmember Agajanian has a job, and Kasakian has a job, Councilmember Najarian has a job, and I understand that. It's very difficult, but I think to allocate funding for extra positions this is not the time. This is just not the time.
If I can add, Mr. Mayor, I was thinking each council member to have an assistant which will work with the council member but will not be city employee. Like, say, in private practice, what they do is, like, somebody will help me, let's say, 2 hours a day, but the person will not be city employee, will be paid for that 2 hour to assist me, to review and go through the material and find the right solutions to it. So each council member gonna have not one person to take care of all the council members, but each each assistant will take care of that council member and will work with the council member, but will be paid by the city as part-time job, not a, I don't want the city become the person to become, or the persons to become city employees. Not full-time, no. Not a full-time person. I was thinking like 6 hours a week, I'm gonna have somebody to help me to review and investigate or research few items.
Mayor Kasakian, member City Council, Councilmember Agajanian, if these persons are not city employees, we don't have a mechanism of paying them directly. So I assume you mean perhaps part-time city employees as opposed to a full-time employee.
I mean, I don't want somehow this assistant to become part of this city. That's what I was thinking. Or maybe you have to allocate money, and I find my own assistant and bill you for the person. I give you the name and everything, and will be my assistant. I will present it to the city as an independent contractor, maybe. They will work for me, and city will pay for them.
I will say the following, and I don't know how much time. Certainly, you've heard at least from 2 council members who'd like to have further discussion on this, and we can do that when we do a first quarter review or whatever. When we come back to make adjustments, we can have a further discussion. But I will say to Councilmember Devine, I appreciate your stance on fiscal conservatism. However, when we are making multi-million-dollar decisions, and when our ability to fully be engaged sometimes is limited by the lack of assistance that we receive, because we have 5 council members all asking staff to do various things at various times. That is, unfortunately, in my opinion, being a penny wise but pound foolish. I think whatever we get, even if it's someone that we pay part-time or 2 part-time people to be able to come in and assist us at various events, it is a good investment in the community. It's not an investment just in ourselves. It's an investment in serving the city of Glendale and its residents and stakeholders. All right.
Excuse me,
let's move on.
Mr. Mayor. Why, Mr. Golanian, why we can't have as an independent contractor? You hire lots of people as independent contractors. So why I cannot have an assistant will be considered as independent contractor helping me or helping them, each one?
Mr. Mayor, Member City Council, Councilmember Agajanian, we typically don't hire independent contractors. We hire companies, firms that, you know, we can, I assume we can hire temporary help from a personnel firm that provide temporary help and pay them, as opposed to paying directly to a person that helps city council members.
But it's well, I mean, there is a way to pay them eventually.
Yes, council member.
Different names.
Right, and when we bring a report back, we'll definitely include that option.
Okay, thank you.
I would, if I could just make a quick comment on this. I think, you know, this goes to the bigger question of this job that we have. It's a full-time job, or I think it should be a full-time job. And I'm in the very fortunate position to be able to treat it as a full-time job, although obviously I'm not compensated for that, but that's just my you know, life circumstance. And I think Councilmember Devine is in the same place. So we're able to do this job. And I think having it as a part-time job is a bigger problem with the size of our city. So I think this goes a lot deeper than just having an assistant to help us for 2 hours, you know. I mean, and another thought comes to mind is I'm sure there are a lot of people who would love an internship doing this kind of work. It would be great experience for a young person to assist a council member. And maybe we could set up an internship program for people to kind of be like an ombudsman or somebody just to support, you know, just to support a council member in their correspondence. I haven't felt the need to do that, but I'm sure if I did, there would be plenty of very, very qualified students at maybe Glendale College or others that would jump at the opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, Councilmember Brotman, that's a good point. And Mayor Kasakian and I actually have had conversations with USD management and regarding a joint internship program with USD and students. So when we bring the report back, we'll cover all of these items for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Let's go to information technology.
Yes, thank you.
We have 2 more departments left,
right,
correct?
Right. So the more appropriately renamed information technology, mainly 2 functions, 2 primary divisions, applications division, which consists of project management and implementation, GIS for building maps for police and fire and GWP, and for the city's license and permitting services, content and document management system to digitize, store, and manage records, application support for various departments, and software license, maintenance, and contract management for over 100 software systems. The infrastructure division includes phone, email, and chat support for all city staff, data center systems that host the city's business application, internet connectivity, Wi-Fi in public spaces, and cybersecurity that includes firewalls, VPN services, and endpoint threat protection. As far as personnel are concerned, there's a decrease by 6.5 positions. 5 positions, you may recall, during the budget presentation for police department, 5 positions in wireless functions were moved to the police department from information technology. And I mentioned earlier this morning, half of the IT director position shifted to finance department, as well as 1 departmental apps manager vacant position eliminated and redirected to another department. Budget for information technology contains 3 funds. ITD infrastructure fund, there's increases in salaries and benefits, about $244,000, hourly wages, computers, $104,000, and switches, $130,000 as part of their M&O. There's increase of about $2 million due to cost of contracts going up. This is for primarily 2 contracts, infrastructure managed services, increased by $260,000, and Microsoft Enterprise Agreement and Server Cloud, that's going to be shifting $1.3 million from ITD Applications Fund, and as well as an increase in wireless data communication, that's $800,000, and this function, again, shifting from wireless fund to the infrastructure fund. This is offset by an overall decrease of about $923,000 existing projects that was appropriated last year. There is a decrease of $1.1 million, and we are just proposing a $300,000 appropriation this year. And there are 3 new projects for a total of $630,000. ITD Application Fund, this also similarly has increases in salaries and benefits and PERS costs, depreciation and amortization, and ISD service charges. There's an increase in projects of $305,000 for 2 new projects. That's an intranet upgrade of $75,000, and the Axon interview room expansion in police department, $230,000. But there's also a decrease in contractual services. This is due to Microsoft Enterprise Agreement shifted to ITD infrastructure that I mentioned, and Oracle database support that decreased $93,000. There are 2 other increases, the ticketing system, $250,000, and the new application inventory continuity planning for $150,000. Departmental highlights, this was mentioned before, upgrade of the police dispatch system to have access to more incident data to further help in investigations and crime analysis, which will have a live GIS integration for better officer deployment to incidents. We're not requesting new funding. There's about just over $2 million in carryover funds from 3 separate funds appropriated last year. We have talked about this previously during the CDD's budget presentation, new license and permitting system. The department will be replacing the land management system with a new license and permitting system, which will automate public-facing services and provide for much-needed additional and timely services to the community. Some of the key services are online 24/7 access to apply, check the status of permits, licenses, and inspections, the ability to submit and review plans electronically, automated email notifications and alerts to applicants, and online payment processing and printing of license and permits, which will ultimately improve our customer service by reducing communication delays. The police interview room audio and video system, department will be installing new network and audio-video cabling for the police interview rooms, also replace the old equipment with new microphones, cameras, and speakers. With this upgrade, we'll be centralizing our recordings from field and office interviews to create efficiency for casework between the police department and district attorney's office, proposing $230,000 out of the ITD applications fund. Very important, cybersecurity expansion includes addition of redundant firewalls and security software, which will provide a secondary path to the internet, just in case the primary data center is in maintenance or is experiencing an outage. This expansion will also lay the ground for redundancy of new projects like the public Wi-Fi master plan. Business continuity. This includes installation of network equipment to mirror the equipment in our primary data center. And with this, business applications will be able to run in any city data center, and large or important facilities will then be able to connect to our primary or secondary data center or the internet, requesting a $300,000 out of the ITD infrastructure fund. And Mr. Mayor, Mayor City Council, that covers our information technology department. We'll pause here for questions or comments.
Are there any questions, comments? Go ahead. Any?
I have a question.
Sure.
Could you, I guess you previously mentioned about new employees in the permit section. Can you remind us what has been changed in there recently?
Councilmember Agajanian, are you referring to the Community Development Department planning section?
Yes, planning and maybe permit section also. I want to see if nothing has been changed in the permit section for the...
No, Mr. Mayor, Member City Council, Councilmember Agajanian, as I went over it during the CDD's budget presentation, Council has approved a number of additional positions. The department has already filled, I believe, 2 or 3 positions. They are in the process of recruitment, finalizing the recruitment for additional 3 positions, and some restructuring within the department to shift some functions to more appropriate personnel.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment, question. Cybersecurity is something I worry about a lot. I know cities have been hit, and they've had their kind of their systems and information locked up, and have had to pay
Ransoms.
ransom. And I know that we probably don't want to discuss too much of our strategy in the public because that could help the bad guys out there. But I do hope that we are preparing, kind of, a mirroring our data, and so in the event something like that happens, we're not totally without options. And then the other thing is training training our staff on how to identify and respond to phishing attempts, because that is the way that most of these attacks occur, and they're constantly evolving tricks to try to get people to click on links that infect their system. So I don't know if you want to comment on any of that, but those are 2 things I think I want to make sure we're doing. I think there has been some training, but we should constantly be refreshing this because it's an evolving threat.
Councilmember Brotman, Mayor City Council, we certainly do agree with your comments. Definitely, those are concerns that Mr. Bradford and I and the rest of the executive team and quite frankly the rest of the organization should share. And we have started, and the cybersecurity network and the technical stuff is beyond my area of expertise. But on a continuous basis, you have seen emails that come through the IT department with reminders and training videos and training sessions that we've provided to our employees to make sure that they don't fall for these phishing attempts at different levels and different sizes and shapes and forms. But I'll refer to Mr. Bradford for additional information.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian. Councilmember Brotman, members of the council, I share your concerns over cybersecurity. It is sometimes my 2 a.m. thought with the world we live in. But without divulging too much to your point, we have put in quite a few safeguards, and we continue to do to protect against ransomware or crypto lock-in, if you will. So to that extent, we are looking at putting our information and data in different places is about the best way I could say that, to safeguard against that. And as far as Mr. Galanian alluded to, as far as our cybersecurity training, email is one of the biggest attack vectors right now. So we constantly have our training campaign, as Mr. Galanian mentioned, to train our employees to help spot them. When in doubt, call somebody, call me, call my department is the message. If you're not sure, if it looks suspicious, it probably is. So we continue to do that on a fairly routine basis to train our employees.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
wherever you are. Technology is not my area of expertise either, but I have to say that staff, Mr. Bradford and Huggo, have trained me in recognizing these phishing expeditions or whatever they're called, because I have been a victim and they have rescued me. And so I have to say that they are doing a good job. And I would recommend that, I don't know that are you doing the same for all of council? I'm the least technologically strong council member, but I don't know if anyone else has had a problem.
Councilmember Devine, members of the council periodically does reach out to me if something doesn't look right. And so I do work with them occasionally as I'm forwarded. Sometimes it is our own training exercises that are being forwarded, which is the whole point of the exercise. And they don't, as my staff shouldn't, they don't even tell me. I'm usually not in on it, as I shouldn't be either, because I need to continually to train as well as the finance director, or IT director and finance director. That's a long way of saying yes. I do work with the other council from time to time.
Yeah, and I do appreciate all the help that I've gotten. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, on page 51.
Your microphone.
Your microphone.
Wow.
Phone.
On page 51 anyway, on right box, the second bullet point on page 51. Second bullet point, yes, on the top box. Public outreach to train the community on the new system. How we train the community? How we train the community?
Councilmember Agajanian, members of the council, this is going to be a kind of a multi-pronged approach. This will be a new system. Our community is going to interact with our licensing and permitting system a lot differently. So we're going to be doing community workshops, open houses. We'll be doing a lot of advertising on our website as well as through GTV6 with informational videos, how-to. And it's really going to change how we do our business. We're going to really change it to an electronic submission. We're really switching to a digital world, and that is what our constituency has asked. So we need to get the word out. I don't think you can over-communicate in this situation, because it will be a change. It will be different for our community. So that's basically what we'll be doing with public outreach.
Thank you, Ron.
Are there any other comments? Well, if there aren't any other comments, I would just like to say that I echo the concerns and compliments of my colleagues to our IT department. I believe that, as others have stated, protecting our residents' private information, as we are a source of data, we collect data So protecting our residents' private information should be a paramount priority given what is happening across the country in terms of trying to hold organizations hostage, take that information and sell it on the dark web or other black markets. And we do need to take our cyber security seriously. So, Mr. Bradford, whatever you require, again, this is one of those areas where it may cost us more than we had anticipated, or we may not have foreseen this as an expense, but we do need to take every measure possible. So as things change, as there's new technology out there that can help protect our interests better, please let us know. And lastly, in the new licensing and permitting system, I'm very excited for this. I think it's overdue, and I'm glad that we're doing this now, and hopefully it goes off without a hitch. I would like to ask IT staff to tell us, come back to us and let us know how they are performing how they are measuring the performance and success of the implementation, and give us a regular update as to how it's being implemented.
We can certainly do that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And if I may, last but certainly not least, it's the City Treasurer's Office, which includes two primary functions: investment that invests idle city funds, and banking relationships that negotiates annual contracts with banks. It's the smallest of our departments in size, 5 full-time employees, and there's no change for next fiscal year. Their budget, only one fund, out of general fund, there's a 9.4% increase, primarily due to salaries and benefits, amount of $62,000, and increase in ISD service charges, and another $26,000. Departmental highlights: the management of the city's investment portfolio by monitoring market trends and looking for investment opportunities to implement the best portfolio strategies while adhering to the city's investment goals of safety, liquidity, and yield. Management of public funds. This is done by monitoring bank accounts to identify fraudulent transactions or breaches, and to take quick steps to resolve and remediate such transactions, and to explore the latest security technology and tools to support departments in their banking transactions. This way, the treasurer will be able to protect public funds, improve office efficiency and effectiveness, and reduce costs from fraud repercussions. Lastly, compliance of payment card industry data security standards, or PCI DSS. This is going to be done by coordinating with the city's PCI team to educate all department merchant locations in the city's card payment environment, assist and support the department's PCI DSS efforts, and collect and maintain documents for the annual audit and payment card industry compliance. This is to protect customers' payment card data, reduce risk of data breach, and maintain favorable merchant ratings, and finally, prevent payment card fraud, fines, I'm sorry. And that concludes this morning's departmental presentation. Again, we'll take a pause here for any questions and comments.
Any questions or comments?
I don't see any here.
Good luck.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, if you don't have any questions, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Bradford, our Finance and IT Director, to go over, like I mentioned, the summary of the fiscal year 2022-23 proposed budget in a summary that you have seen and heard and discussed thus far.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian. So we've made it. We have presented our entire budget to these budget study sessions. We have made it to the end of our journey. This is a summary of our adopted budget for 21-22 and our proposed 22-23 budget. It is now over $1 billion. The general fund, as I indicated in the first study session, had an increase of 6.4%. Primarily due to our salary and benefit increases and our internal service charge increases. As you can see, the Measure S funding that we detailed in the departmental slides, that increase due to additional funding for safety and security, quality of life, housing, and economic vibrancy in alignment with council's priorities. The big increase in the special revenue funds is primarily in our Section 8 fund for additional vouchers. As you can see, we have an increase of $10 million in our capital improvement fund, which is one of the big items is funding for the ARTSOC Entertainment District. And as you can see, we also have more funding for our capital improvement Measure S, $17.1 million. That is of which $8 million is set aside for additional affordable housing land acquisition, additional funding for Fremont Park, and additional funding for our seismic upgrades. You can see a big chunk of the increases in our enterprise fund. Primarily, that's GWP, as they presented in their departmental budget. They had increases due to natural gas purchases and quite a bit of CIP projects that they detailed in their departmental presentation. So all told, we have a grand total of, as I said, over $1 billion, which is roughly a 12.6% increase over last year. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Before we give our comments, I don't know what questions there may be, since this is a summary and the recapping of everything we've gone through the budget study sessions. Let me see. I know that there's at least one speaker. Let's have the speaker be called up.
Herbert Milano.
I have some slides.
Herbert, give me about 30 seconds so I can do this. We are ready.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kazaki and members of the City Council. My name is Herbert Molano. Yesterday in the news was one of the most prominent news stories that affects the city of Glendale. And that was the significant loss in the valuation of the stock market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the NASDAQ were both down. They continue to go down. And these two items that we have in the news, the high inflation rate and the loss in valuation, has a huge, significant impact on Glendale's budget for this year and coming years. And this was what I want to highlight. Because they impact significantly the long-term debt that we have with regard to the pensions and the pension obligations. So I have before you the Glendale Public Pension Liability that I collected from the CAFR from the year 2001 to now, 20 years. And as you can see, this is an exponential increase that is relentless and does not reduce, not even tapered. Every time you increase employees, increase the number of levels in the salaries, in the steps, every time you do adjustments for inflation, all of these things have an impact on this particular number, and it's relentless. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is the unfunded portion of that, what we owe for which we have not paid to cover that obligation. And as you can see, we have a $778 million reduction in that from a surplus back in 2001 to a debt as of last year's June, $640 million combined. And this is what I want to talk about, the fact that the impacts of the economy, when what it has on the overall impact on the city, which we then have to allocate funds in the tens of millions of dollars additionally in order to cover that. That impacts your ability to function and ability to provide services. Next slide. So the pension obligation is paid for by employee contributions, employer contributions, but in 2001, there were no additional contributions done at all, going back 30 years. And then we have the CalPERS investment returns, which I want to focus on. Next slide. So the impacts of inflation, it increases city salaries based upon the labor agreements that you have. The city's overall costs rise. And if the economy shrinks, you have lower tax revenues, and the CalPERS investments will also shrink. Next slide. If the CalPERS investments tank, the city must make up the difference, because it is through those funds that we're actually paying for the additional benefits. And so whenever there's a downturn in the stock market, you really got to pay attention to those numbers significantly. Next slide. So basically, we're in a position, it's a lose-lose-lose situation, right? Higher base salaries tied to the COLA, higher salaries due to salary steps, the higher pension obligations, higher pension payments, and then perhaps lower tax revenues. One more item, please.
Mr. Milano, your 3 minutes is up.
Very well. If I may allow to close, Mayor?
That's fine. I'll allow Mr. Milano to finish his presentation if he doesn't have much longer. Will another minute or 2 minutes suffice?
Just 2 slides, that's it. This one basically...
And there is no other speaker, so please go ahead, Mr. Milano.
The pension liability is growing at the rate of $74 million a year. The pension debt is growing at the rate of $38 million a year. And that is despite an additional $300 million that we paid in the last 20 years to compensate for the additional increases over the normal payments. One last slide. The California Auditor's Office placed Glendale at the bottom 20% in terms of its financial condition. So if the city can take a look at the liquidity, debt burden, pension obligations, and revenues that basically support that number, and is available on the website, in the fiscal health of California cities by the California Auditor. And that's my presentation.
Mr. Milano, let me ask you a question. So I understand your commitment to these presentations. You've been making them for as long as I've been sitting in these chambers. What is your proposal that we do as an organization or as a city?
My suggestion is that perhaps the budget study session should have been focusing on the bigger numbers first. I come here and I see discussions of items that are like a fraction of a 0.0001 of the total budget, and we have items that are in the tens of millions of dollars, and basically now in the billions of dollars obligations that we have. That perhaps we have a discussion on to how the economy impacts long-term all of the city's obligations, especially the long-term obligations, and understanding as to why we rate so low with regard to other cities in California. Out of 470 cities, we're in the bottom 20%. Without any focus on these long-term obligations and knowing what the impact that it has on the city, we are not able to really assess where the needs of the city are going to be constrained by those obligations. And that's where I'd like the city to focus on.
I'm sorry, you said we're in the bottom 20% of cities in regard to what exactly?
In regard to its financial risk. In other words, normally it's a negative risk calculation. The city auditor placed Compton, for example, as the worst in the financial conditions, and it placed the city of Glendale 69 in terms of the most riskiest condition in terms of its finances. Thank you very much.
Would staff like to respond to some of the issues raised?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, nothing that the speaker mentioned is new to staff. It's not new to council. You are concerned, you have mentioned numerous times your concerns with the PERS obligations, and as a result, there was a direction by the City Council to establish a pension review commission that have, over the last many months, met at long duration meetings with 14, 15 members of the community, They have spent extensive times in generating a report that will come to this council. We're planning to submit it on June 28th. There's I heard it was 66 pages of this report, so it's quite comprehensive. And and this council, executive team, and I have always been concerned. We have competing interests. There's, like I mentioned, balancing act. There are services, critical services that we need to provide to this community. And as such, we need employees, we need staff, we need labor to provide these services, and staff come at a cost. We are one of the most efficiently run cities, in my opinion, and my network of peers. We, as you know, have a very healthy fund balance, and I believe financially we stand, regardless of this report that I'm being told it was done in 2019. I don't know the merits of this report. There are many other reports out there, but regardless of what this report states, I believe compared to our cities in the region, in our Tri-Cities, we are at a much better, a more stable financial position as we stand, notwithstanding the future PERS obligations that we are challenged with, and we tackle as best as we can.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Agajanian.
When we are going to approve the budget?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, Councilmember Agajanian, the budget will be presented to council at a public hearing on June 14th.
So, but why the report comes to us then June 28th? I mean, doesn't make sense. You bring a report after we approve the budget. I mean, that report should come to us before June 14.
Yes, Councilmember Agajanian, that was the plan initially, but this committee was adamant about continuing with their additional meetings, and it didn't allow for sufficient time to prepare, like I said, the 66-page report. And I haven't read the entire report, but I've been briefed on it. The recommendations in this report, I am told, that will not have an impact on the the fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget that you will consider for adoption on June 14. So if anything comes out of that report, it will have an impact on future budgets.
So I have a question. So then, are we to expect from this task force recommendations on how we can deal with our pensions in a different way than we're already doing? Do we know that?
Mr. Mayor, Member City Council, Councilmember Devine, this report will include recommendations. I can't say that there are things that we have not considered or implemented in the past. There may be one or two recommendations that we have discussed previously, but haven't implemented, and that will be up to council's direction.
Okay.
But if you need more detail, Mr. Garcia and Mr. Taktalian can provide more details if you have questions.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Of course, it was our hope that, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was our hope that Blue Ribbon Committee would have resolved, come to some conclusions much, much sooner than they actually did. It's just that they went so long, and that's how the timing ended up.
And if I might, I do want to thank Mr. Milano for continuing to keep this issue in front of us and in front of the public. I think we all know that our budget situation looks decent this year. Looks like next year should be okay. Beyond that, we know we're facing a cliff, you could say, and he's absolutely right with the way the markets are going, the stock market is going. It's going to be a really, really challenging issue for us going forward. We're going to have to make some tough choices. We know what our options are. I mean, You know, it's on the revenue side or it's on the spending side, right? Or we do more with less, or we renegotiate with our bargaining units. I mean, the reckoning is coming. And we do need to start planning for it. So I don't know really what else there is to say right now, but there are no easy options. We obviously can't get out of these obligations that we unfortunately, fortunately agreed to years ago. We're stuck with them. I don't think there's much appetite in the community for increasing taxes. I don't think there's much appetite for cutting services. That doesn't add up. So we're going to have some tough conversations over the next couple years. I mean, I guess the good news is that we know that there's kind of a peaking in this problem, which is about 8 to 10 years out, I think, roughly. At some point, it gets better, but we're going to have a tough decade ahead of us.
All right, if there are no other comments, the only thing I'll say is thank you to all the departments today who presented. Thank you to the city manager, the staff. As far as the comments that Mr. Milano made in his presentation, I believe that Mr. Milano cares very deeply for this city. One has to care for the city to be coming to city council meetings for year after year, I think well over a decade perhaps, to make the presentation and points that he's raising. And although he may come across sometimes frustrated or overly critical of staff, I don't think it's because he lacks an appreciation for the work that we all collectively do, but he is as concerned as we all are, as Councilmember Brotman and others have mentioned. Now, what we do moving forward, it requires us to all continue to put on our thinking caps and try and figure out what we can do while not necessarily shortchanging our residents in terms of the quality of services that they've come to expect from us. That is the challenge of, I believe, any council. How do we do the things that we basically have to provide for and do for our community, while also being very fiscally responsible, ensuring that we're providing a good financial foundation for future councils and the next generation of residents and stakeholders in Glendale. I don't know, is there any other additional comments or questions that my colleagues would like to direct to staff before we entertain a motion to adjourn this study session?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Seconded by Councilmember Najarian.
All right, thank you. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you to everyone. Take care.